A bill that would require parents to verify their income in order for their children to access free school lunch moves to the next step.
It's headed to a vote in the Senate now. Sophia Jernander talked with legislators about what's next.
It's a bill that would require parents to verify their income for children to get free school lunch. And today that bill passed a major milestone in the process to become state law.
Even among the opponents to this bill, they recognize that we have a challenge and an issue around the at-risk funding overpayments. So there's a general acknowledgement that that is an issue.
Senator Doug Shane is behind the legislation. The bill has been criticized for violating USDA law, which requires schools to verify all applications within the first 10 days of the school year.
Having those restrictions, and they possibly violate federal law.
On Tuesday, the bill passed favorably out of committee, but not without some changes. Senator Shane says schools would not have to verify 100% of all applications.
There's a number of direct qualifiers to receive free and reduced lunch. This bill changes absolutely nothing in that instance.
Only parents who don't automatically qualify would need to have their income verified.
They, of course, have to qualify for the National School Lunch Program. To meet the definition, that's when the proof of income or verification of income would stand in.
Lawmakers say their intent is not to take lunches away from students, but to clean up the program so that it works efficiently.
When we have programs that we say are really, really important, we can agree that they're important, but we could also agree that they need to be executed well.
Again, the bill did pass favorably out of committee, meaning it goes to the Senate for a final vote. At the State House, Sophia Jernander, 12 News.